trying to remember.
I think you're first.
I'll do first, and then John.
Thank you.
And then you,
Then they,
and then Griff. You're third.
We're going down the line, just if they may. Do a clean up batter.
That's right.
Get us all home.
that's right, yes.
The best on base percentage.
All right.
Jeff had another commitment tonight, so he found Jonathan down tonight. So I think we're still in, yeah, we're still in need, but,
Spotlights.
Got the makeup. Darn.
yeah, I know, I didn't.
Yeah, we need a makeup person next.
All the time. Guess he'll let us know. He's ready. So quiet.
Oh, you're going to use that?
He's gonna get you a different chair.
Okay.
Well, I'll go ahead and start. Welcome all. This kickoff meeting is a great occasion, and we couldn't be happier to be sharing it with all of you. Thank you to the Leshers for their leadership in proposing this idea and making a contribution to launching this project. Thank you to our voters who overwhelmingly said yes to this idea. This park is a dream and a vision right now. The Town Select Board is committed to this project, and we need your help with the design and planning work to bring our shared vision to life. A transformation this ambitious doesn't get hatched overnight. Things happen when we imagine them. First, we have to imagine them. Then we have to work together to accomplish them.
I'm John Duke, I'm the town manager. I think everybody in this room knows me, but if not, hello and welcome. We're excited about a new park for Rockport. We're excited about trying something new, which is a private-public community partnership, okay? And part of that also comes with a great deal of gratitude on the town's behalf towards Griff and the Lesher family for even allowing for this conversation and this process to continue. So great thanks from us to the Leshers. Their time and funding will help us get started, and we're looking forward to that process. We think that if we develop strategic partnerships, we can meet more of our goals. We're willing to test a new way of working, to learn, collaborate with a community partner, and innovate. We believe that having a park partner will add to our resources. We're seeing it happen around the country through our already early stages of this process, and we think we can make it happen here in Rockport. We're committed to a process that includes all community voices, and so I'm so glad to see all these chairs filled and more chairs being pulled out of the back. And certainly more will be watching, and certainly this is a process that doesn't end tonight. It really starts tonight and moves, as you'll see through these slides, through a much longer period of time. Through our communities' shared values and commitment to making this town better and better, we believe we can build a partnership that is stronger together and better equipped to meet our park's goals. Griff.
Thank you, John. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Griff Lesher, and my wife Linda and I came to Rockport back in 2008, and that was a time actually that we noticed that they were taking down one of the last RES buildings that was being removed from the RES site. Linda, some of you may know, owns and runs the Barn Swallow Books store across the street. And as we became more acquainted with the area, and our grandchildren actually used to learn how to ride their bikes on the concrete at the IRS site, became clear to us that the RES site was a very special one to the town. And we love this place, and we wanted to give something back. So in 2021, I'd established the Lesher Family Foundation. We had a number of different goals. Among them was land stewardship and community revitalization. And we firmly believe that parks are a real asset to a community. Brings people together, different generations, a place to gather, a place to share, a place to enjoy. So we brought a proposal for the park to the town last year, and we're thrilled by the voter approval of that proposal. But the ultimate success of the park was really going to rely on the community input. After all of you are going to be enjoying it, we hope. And so we wanted to provide a starting point, a framework, but it's really going to be up to the town, the residents, and the public officials with the support of our foundation to ensure that the project has long-term success. We don't want something that gets developed, is good for a couple of years, and then succeeding generations can't enjoy it. So we have great respect for the residents' knowledge and expertise, and we want to include all of the voices in this process as best we can, which will take some time to find out what really people want for the park. So we've assembled a team which we hope will make all of this happen. The main director for the Lesher Family Foundation is MJ Young, sitting to my right, and I'm now going to turn it over to her, and she will present the rest of the cast and characters and the program. Thank you.
Thanks, Griff. I think I know most of you, but I'm Mary Jane MJ Young. I grew up next door, and I am the main director for the Family Foundation. Our team, Eammon Hutton, at the end of the table here, is a landscape architect with 20 years of experience designing and building parks nationally. His work foregrounds vernacular design in harmony with ecological systems. Nearly all of Eammon's projects have been designed through meaningful collaboration with local communities. And Kathy Blaha, who will be doing most of the presenting tonight, is a parks and public lands planner with expertise in planning and governance solutions that support public project development and implementation. Whew. She has more than 30 years of experience helping public and private organizations implement park program initiatives. Her services include researching and launching new initiatives, honing existing programs, project development, learning, training, and partnership creation. And to my right is Dominic Pepper, our executive director.
I think I'm up next.
Yes.
Is that right? And Kathy, did we add a slide with the timeline for me to touch on?
Yes, if I can.
So, as MJ introduced, I'm a landscape architect. My focus is in design and construction of parks. So this really isn't my meeting, as we heard. It's mostly going to be Kathy's focus tonight. But my role here will be guiding the design process. So I just wanted to break it down a bit real quick for you all. So shown in the light green, our work will begin with the master plan for the entire 7-acre site that looks far into the future and anticipates changes that the community might want as far as 10 or 15 years out. Then again, working with the community will help to identify phase 1 to be built in the near future. We'll then work on construction documents and carry it through to construction there in yellow. So if you're here tonight because you're really charged up about a design issue for the future park, I have good news and bad news. The bad news is tonight's not really the meeting for it. Tonight we'll be focusing on this parallel process here. Kathy will be on the formation of a conservancy. But the good news is if you really are very passionate and charged up and committed to a long haul, we'd like you to be part of the working group. So you might, in fact, be in the right place.
And do you want to tell them when the first design meeting is?
I sure do. Didn't stick the landing. Our first design meeting, in this community engagement bar, we'll have 4 large public meetings for the community and a number of smaller topical meetings, the first of which will be November 6th. Mark your calendars.
At the Opera House. But that'll be publicized and sent in emails.
All right, great. Thank you, everybody. And I don't really want to use this, but this is being audio taped and videotaped for all of your neighbors who couldn't be here. And so that's why I'm holding this in front of me. Do we have the right sound? He's working on the sound. So first of all, it's a real pleasure to be here. This is my second trip to Maine. My first one was about 25 years ago, and the best thing that I remember was eating those giant popovers in Acadia at Jordan Pond. And I'm sure I drove through Rockport, but I don't remember. All the places were beautiful. This morning I woke up and I said, this is quintessential Maine. Just absolutely beautiful, and thank you for the terrific weather, because I'm from Florida and I like warmer weather. So, I've been doing this work for a long time, and I've been in a lot of places. And I just wanted to start by saying to you that there are just about every size, shape, type of park conservancy, park support group you can imagine around the country. There's probably 1,000 of them now. Over the last 50 years, they've proliferated and become terrific partners to towns, cities, counties who don't have the resources anymore to manage parks and recreation the way they used to. And so it might be something new for Rockport, but you're in good shape because there's a lot of experience out there that we can build on. So tonight, primarily what we're going to talk about is building that team and getting started. And as Eammon said, about a month or so from now, we'll delve into design. And so there's lots of different ways for you to touch this project and get involved. And we hope those of you who really care about the long term will help me in creating that new organization, that conservancy that is going to really be the steward and the manager for the long run for the park. So next slide. This is just a quick and dirty of what we're going to talk about, just generally the opportunity. This idea of a public-private community partnership, how that works. What is a conservancy, if you're not familiar with that. How you can help. And then we've also seen a little bit of the timeline with Eammon, and then we'll have a lot of time for questions and answers and discussion. And if you have a really pressing question in the middle of the slides, just wave your hand and we'll take it. Next slide. So a couple of people here alluded to the fact that you had, a lot of support for creating the park. 87%. I mean, I never see that. That was fantastic. A great turnout, and 87% of the voters said yes. So this is not like half the people like it, half the people don't like it. Almost everybody likes this idea. And it's terrific to be in a place where there's consensus almost that that site should be a park. So that was really great news for me. The first bullet here is the warrant that was part of the ballot that said, part of voting yes for this means that the terrific philanthropic support of the Leshers will help us get it done. And a reminder, this is a multi-year process, and it's about visioning, it's about design, it's about creating a new conservancy. So there's lots of elements here that some of you may feel more comfortable doing than others, but I think there's something for everybody in all of this. Next slide. So once again, huge thank you to the Lesher Family Foundation. I don't go into very many places where there's that commitment and that amount of funding on the table to launch a project. Usually the first step is capital fundraising, and we don't have to do that, or don't have to do a lot of it. Dom is going to get me in trouble if I say we don't have to do that. Some of that will be needed, but this gets us started, which is terrific. And we're talking about partnerships, which is kind of a worn phrase, but it's really meaningful. It's partnerships between the Leshers and the town, between the town and the community, between the community and the new conservancy. It's really this community partnership thing. We say public-private, but I like to say public-private community, because it's much bigger than that. So that's what we're here to talk about tonight. Next slide. So who doesn't know what a conservancy is? Or who has a good example of a conservancy that you know about and like? Nature Conservancy, works national, yep. You have a Coastal Mountains Land Trust here, which is almost like a conservancy. It's got a conservation mission rather than a single park focus. But they go back about 50 years. Central Park Conservancy in New York and Golden Gate Conservancy in San Francisco were two of the very early ones. And they've pioneered just about everything for us. And along the way, almost every major city has at least one, and most of them have more than one. But now you're seeing mid-sized cities and small towns and counties creating conservancies, whether they call it a conservancy or a foundation or something. It's that notion of a private nonprofit, community-based park support group. The group gets created with one focus, and that is to make sure that that park gets built based on the community's vision and managed based on the community's vision. So what we're going to do to get us there is we're creating what we call a working group. And that's a group of citizens. All of you in this room are welcome to join that group. That's going to work with me. I'm going to facilitate this process of what that new organization is going to look like. We're going to create a vision statement. We're going to create a mission statement. We're going to create a set of guiding principles. What are important ethics and values that need to go behind this that are going to last for the next 50 years? So that's our starting point for the working group, getting really what I call the guiding documents done. What's the fundamental values and mission behind what we're going to do? Next slide. So we're looking for people to be part of the working group. And the working group is a multitude of tasks. We need people who have skills and experiences and might have some legal background or some accounting background, but we also need people who just care about the park. Passion, commitment, your place in this community, your history in this community will all be really important to creating both those guiding documents, and that's some goals and objectives and a business plan. And then we're going to incorporate and become a nonprofit corporation, which is what a conservancy is. And then that group will partner with the town. But that working group is what we need now, is to build a team to help us think about those guiding documents to get us started. Next slide. So this is a really cool graphic that Eammon did. And this kind of shows you what's going on here, right? So we have two processes. And maybe I'll just let Eammon describe it, because you did
absolutely.
it. You do a good job.
So I tried to say this in the schedule as well. Two processes: forming the conservancy, and then the design and construction of the park. And so each is spearheaded by a different committee or group. The working group that we're talking about today sits atop the conservancy effort, and then on the design side, a coordinating committee. Each one has representation, but in different ways, from the town of Rockport, the Family Foundation, and residents. So here on the working group, we would have a number of residents, a representative from LFF, and a representative from the select board. And then on the coordinating committee, they're really about getting us designers unstuck from technical issues, so coordinating utilities and things like that. I'll have a representative from the select board, DPW, and LFF, and our resident input really comes through the public meetings in this process.
If you go to the next slide, this just hones in on what we're going to focus on today. So Eammon and I are here really to help you, to facilitate you, to use our experience, our connections, our ideas to support your vision of what you want to have happen. So we're the facilitators, the town, the residents, LFF, you guys are going to make it happen. The outcome, when we're done, is we're launching a new nonprofit organization. Next slide. So as I've said, there are hundreds, there's probably thousands of conservancies around the country. If you've traveled a little bit, you know there's big ones, there's small ones. Some of them have, I think Central Park Conservancy now has a $100 million budget. We've seen $50,000 budgets. But they all work the same, and we'll get to some of those traits that make them work. There's lessons to be learned from all of them. I go to places big and small, and they say, don't tell me about New York. But in fact, Central Park Conservancy has a lot to teach us. They've been through this. They've been through a lot, and there are a lot of lessons there. And there are a lot of lessons from brand new ones, whether it's Grand Rapids, Michigan, or Sarasota, Florida, or Dallas, Texas. The newer ones are even doing some of this work better. So my job is to pull some of those lessons and help us think about what makes sense here in Rockport, even though it's not Dallas and it's not New York and it's not Chicago. Because we're going to have total flexibility in creating the nonprofit that makes sense here. Next slide. So this is a kind of a short list of what the working group is going to do. It's pretty straightforward if you think about it. We want to take a look at what we can learn from other places around the country. So there are case studies and questions that we can do research on to understand better what we want this group to look like. Very important step is that vision and mission statement. You know, when it's all done, what's it going to look like? How's it going to work? Who's going to use it? What's the vision of what you all want this to be? That's a really important step. Secondly, then, okay, now we know what we want. How do we get there? And that's the mission statement. What is the purpose of the organization, which is going to allow us to get to that vision? And then principles. You know, some of them are very simple about transparency and accountability. Sometimes we talk about diversity. Sometimes we talk about integrity. But what are kind of a set of values that people in Rockport particularly think are important? And how do we use those to underlie what we're going to do? Then we're going to jump into goals and objectives. We want a kind of a 3-year sense of, for the very beginning of the park, what should we be doing? You know, we've got to develop a community engagement plan and communications and marketing and branding and programs. What are we going to do there? Are we going to have events? Are we going to have softball leagues? Are we going to have, what's going to happen there? So that goals and objectives gives us a focus of, you know, what do we need to do? Once we understand what do we need to do, how are we going to pay for it? We have some funding coming from the Leshers. There'll be funding coming from other places in the community and hopefully the public sector as well. And then we'll have a plan. We'll have a business plan. The business plan is going to align with the master plan, which Eammon and the design folks are going to come up with over the course of the timeline. Actually, you might jump ahead to the next slide. I think it's the timeline. Yeah. Over the course of the timeline, we're going to have a lot of community engagement. We're going to be going through the design process while we're working on the Conservancy. So the input from the design process and what people want and what they want to have happen there is going to inform us in terms of what should the goals and objectives be, what should the business plan look like. So we're going to have 2 plans when we're done. This master plan, which is going to live with the park for hopefully at least 5 years before everybody decides it's time to make changes, and the business plan, which is going to be at least 3 years to get the organization started, and then the budgeting that goes with that. Next slide. And this just same slide, but it grays out the other process and focuses on the Conservancy creation, which is what we're talking about today. The first step that we talked about, drafting guiding documents, setting goals and objectives, looking at costs and revenues, drafting the business plan, incorporating the nonprofit, doing really fun things like writing bylaws and articles of incorporation, drafting a management agreement then, because once the new organization gets created, you have a new nonprofit, the RES Conservancy or whatever we decide to call it, once that group is incorporated, it's going to turn back to John and say, okay, now we want to create a partnership with the town, and we want to have an agreement that says how are we going to manage this together. And then, of course, programming. As the groundbreaking and the site gets developed, there'll be programming going on out there. Next slide. Oh, that got pretty, I'm not sure what happened there with our small type, but what traits do successful conservancies have, right? They have a master plan. They have a roadmap that everybody agrees on through this design process. It says this is what's going to happen. So we all are on the same path. We have a board of directors for the new nonprofit that's representative of the community. We have transparent operations, which is really important because we're community-based. We have thoughtful and well-publicized decision-making. So most of these nonprofits have very active websites. On the website go everything, minutes of the meetings, all the board meetings are public. It's a very transparent organization. It's nonprofit, community-based. And we have outstanding communication with the public, both in terms of telling them what's going on, but also continuing to engage people to say, this is a really great organization to be a part of. We need your time, we need your resources, we want you to come to our events. Next slide. So again, you guys got us to 87%. Hopefully most of you in this room were park supporters and conveyed that to your friends and neighbors, and we got a great vote. But that's just the beginning. As John said, we have a long way to go. This is the first night. It's about taking that passion and turning it into participation, using your skills and experience, a commitment to the process. And you saw it's a long process, but it'll be fun. And it's not hard, and Eammon and I are here to help take you through that, and we've been through this many times before. Next slide. So what can you do? You can do lots of things depending on your comfort level. You all, most of you, I think we didn't run out of sheets, had a sheet on your seat that was a sign-up sheet that we ask you for your email address so that you can stay informed and we can keep you informed. We ask you to indicate whether you're interested in being part of the working group, and then also maybe what skills you have that you're willing to offer or connect with us. You can build our network. So you're sitting here and you're saying, gee, you know, my neighbor, my friend, my work colleague isn't here, and they'd be terrific to be part of this group or to be part of this process, and so help us build our network by sharing those names with us. Create the management plan. This is the management side of it, which is the working group, and I would love to have you participate in that. Or if you're more interested in the design side, Eammon would love to have you participate in those public meetings that start in November. So lots of different ways, again, to touch this project, depending on your interests and your timing and your ability to offer up your support. Next slide. This is my last slide, almost my last slide. Just a reminder, again, that this idea of a public-private community partnership, as John said, is a very different kind of model for a park in Rockport. And it's always been that you sort of rely on the town. It builds the park, it manages the park, it gets out there and mows the grass and holds the events. But we're turning that kind of upside down now, and we're saying the town is going to be a partner. This public land, they're not going anywhere. John's going to be here, and Orion's going to be here for us. But we're asking the community to play a much larger role in how that park works. So this community connection, this teaming up is really important this time because we want to get to play, which is what parks are all about. And the last slide just has everyone's contact information, which I think is also on the, you can go ahead to the next slide. Yeah, it's on the park fact sheet. You'll have contact information as well. But MJ is going to be the connection with the Lesher family. This is the website that's being developed, but has a lot of good information on it already. This is my email address if anybody wants to contact me. And this is Orion, who's the town contact. Everybody knows Orion, right? Yep. All right, so I tried to go through that pretty quickly. It's just 6 o'clock. We have at least a half an hour, and unless y'all want to stay longer, we can do that. We're scheduled to end at 6:30, so y'all can go home and have dinner or be with your kids or whatever. But we're here for as long as it takes. So I'm going to put this microphone down, and I think the goal is to have people come up and sit here and have a microphone so all of this is recorded for those people who aren't here. So if you have a question, come on over here and offer it up. Don't all rush. So what is it about this project that makes you nervous?
Kathy, there's a question here.
Yes. Good.
Do you have additional handouts?
You know, I think we.
Do you have additional handouts?
Can I take these?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Jared, do you have a handout?
Yeah, but it's written. Thank you.
Oh.
I have a question. Is this working? You can hear me? How do we get younger people involved? Because, you know, I know you, Mary Jane, and you know my daughter. And there's a wonderful group of young people in this community, very talented young people in this community. And they're the ones that are going to benefit probably the most, ultimately, from what is developed. So right from the get-go, it seems to me that's the group we all need to be focused on when you say in your first thing, look for your network, add people in. I really think we have to do that with the younger generation.
If you have specific names and ideas, we love to hear them. Yeah.
Thank you, Ames.
In general, when we're working on the public engagement process, our plan has a number of large public meetings, like I said, and then those smaller topical meetings. And the idea there is to be nimble and be able to have meetings where we go out and talk to young folks, for example. You know, it might be around scheduling, you know, finding other times of day that work for people like myself who have young kids. So there, in the engagement, there's definitely going to be an effort to give everybody a chance to come out. But for the working group, I think word of mouth is our best friend for this because it's going to move faster. So if you can reach out to the young people you know, that'd be great.
So I'll take a crack at a question.
Sorry, it's a little loud, John. So you startle yourself. If you go back to the schedule real quick, if you could flip to that, or... Yeah, there you go. Close, that's close enough. So in sort of the form follows function concept, in other words, you build what you're going to use it for. How does the foundation interact, or the Conservancy interact with the designers in the sense of how is the decision as to what's going to be built, which is then follows, that's the design and what has to be designed. I'm seeing the design starting before the Conservancy has gotten to the point of knowing what they want to build or what your goals and objectives are. So just help me understand how that's supposed to work. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Here, you can have this.
Okay.
I can answer that in part, Kathy, but if you want me to start, okay. So that's an astute observation. The working group, their chief charge will be forming the Conservancy, but to your point, what are they making a Conservancy for really matters. They have to be tailored to fit the park that they'll be working with, and vice versa. The park has to be tailored to the Conservancy. So our engagement process, the public engagement process around the master plan, begins pretty soon, November 6th. Tell everybody that you know. And the working group will review, or will have check-ins with the design team prior to every public meeting and at a few other milestones to give feedback on the design, because it is critical that the design matches up to the Conservancy structure. There are other design conversations that'll be happening with the public and with the coordinating committee. So it's the responsibility of those two committees to manage those decisions, but the steering committee and the public engagement process will drive the design as well as the working group.
And the only thing that I would add is that I think there are these guiding documents that I referred to, the mission, vision statements. I think they're bigger. They're bigger and regardless of the design. And I think we can get through that process over the winter. And by spring, I think some of the design ideas will be coming out. We'll have a better sense generally of what the park is going to look like. And of course, the biggest thing will be that management maintenance side that will, I think, drive how we think about resources and how we think about goals. But it's Eammon and my job to make sure that that communication continues and neither one of us get too far or ahead of the other. So yeah, we're doing two things at once because we want to get the process moving. I mean, in a perfect world, he would go through a whole design process and then I'd come in later, but that pushes the schedule out so far, we just decided people didn't want that. So we're going to try to make this work by getting some of the basics done around that organizational development before we get the information on the design, and then we can go from there. It's not unheard of. We can do it.
I wonder, for folks who are considering this, do you have a sense of what kind of a time commitment would be involved for?
Yeah, I'm not
volunteers?
sure. Can you go to the next slide? Yeah, we actually showed some of the dots on here of when we'll be meeting. Some of these are in-person meetings, some of these are Zoom calls. And it's just really a series of touch-base meetings to make sure that we're all on the same page. So you see a lot of meetings here, but it's over almost 2 years. I think there's about 11 meetings there, half of which will be Zoom calls, half of which will be in-person calls, where I'll be here in Rockport. So really not that many, about once every other month, maybe some by the month. Sometimes we'll have some subcommittees on the working group. Subcommittees might meet separately. But I'm pretty good at running an efficient meeting and not keeping it for too long. So
I have a couple questions, maybe more about the mechanics of things. I just looked at the warrant item, and it didn't mention a conservancy. So this is really a question for John and Denise. How was the decision made to have the conservancy? Was that always in the agreement with the proposed agreement with the Lesher Family Foundation? Where did the conservancy come from?
I think the best way I can answer that, David, would be when the initial discussions of how this would come to be were discussed in winter, early spring, there was an expectation that there was a lot we didn't yet know at that time. and what the full expectation as we move through that process, and feel free, Denise, Griff, to chime in, is that there may be an intent that we may need to come back to the voters at some point if for some reason what is the best result for Rockport is something that doesn't fall within the bounds of what that warrant article provided. So I had this conversation with our town attorney as we were sort of drafting this, because it's difficult to say, we're going to give you, the voters are going to give the authority to the town to work with another group to see if you're going to build something that you don't yet quite know what it's going to look like or what it will come to be. And so it was a very difficult process to put that together. Though the building blocks were there, the exact details were still TBD.
Yeah.
So I expect if we, by this process, if it comes back to that there was something that doesn't fall within the bounds of that warrant article, we'll be back before the voters with some clarifying language.
Because
And I could add a little bit, just because I think, as we were, we've got the long-term maintenance, basically, of the park, and I think that was the expectation, that the Conservancy would create the endowment that would provide the funds to continue maintaining the park that had been designed and built. And I sort of appreciate the value of getting the Conservancy created from the get-go, because then you're all lined up as you move forward with the design. You already have the structure. And to have, these sort of guiding principles where, as we know in this town, if people feel like they're not getting information, it's not transparent, that's concerning. And I think to just set that right out from the beginning, that's the expectation here, is that this is a community process. I see that as sort of additional value for the Conservancy.
Yeah, I'm pretty familiar with Friends of organizations. Like, I think almost every national park has a Friends of Acadia National Park, et cetera. And the Friends organizations are very much into the fundraising. But as I understand it, the Friends organizations have basically zero involvement in the running of the facility.
Typically, that's true.
Yes. What I think I heard here, and I'm getting the impression, is this could well result in the Conservancy being the operator of the park. And so the park would be very much different than the other, 5, 6, 7 town parks, which are run by the town. The town sets the policy, the town makes the decisions. And so I think it's going to be real important as the process goes forward that there be very transparency, and the voter, the residents of the town have a decision as to what extent do they want this organization that they have a less direct relationship with in terms of voting and so forth.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Let me address that, because you said a couple things that I don't think are quite right. The Conservancy will be there to support the town and the community's wishes. So once the Conservancy gets created, it has its own business plan of making sure that it can sustain itself. It's going to create a management agreement with the town. And that agreement basically says, we're going to create this master plan together. The town always owns it, always makes policy, and always makes key decisions. So the Conservancy is not going to run amok, because it's going to have a very detailed management agreement with the town that's going to be public information. It's going to be very specific about roles, responsibilities, adherence to the master plan, decision-making, all of that. So I think that the Conservancy sort of going off and doing something that the town doesn't want, that shouldn't happen based on the partnership agreement that gets created.
Yeah, you mentioned New York Central Park, but I know there's been other instances in New York where there's been land that the town, the city, public land, which has then been effectively leased or turned over to a non-profit with a board that comes from somewhere, but not always quite clear where. Sometimes a self-perpetuating board to run that. So that's just one thing. I guess the other question I have is there any agreement that the Lesher Family Foundation or Lesher family members will have a role to play in the Conservancy, or is that to be determined in the future?
I think it would be important for a Lesher Family Foundation member to be on the board. I also think it will be important for John to be on the board. So there will be some of those seats. but depending on how big we want the board, how we organize the board, create committees, but yeah, I mean, they're funding it, they're committed to it, they want to be part of it. I think
You know,
absolutely. that would
I'm
be-
not against it, I'm just want to make, the transparency.
Yes.
Because there is a perception sometimes that the end folks, many of whom are in this room, get together, have their discussions, and make decisions, and then that's the way things happen. So right now, it's not like so the Lesher Family Foundation, really appreciate what they're doing. I think this is a great thing. My questions were more around the sort of transparency and make sure we understand what's happening. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm assuming you're all quiet because you've all signed up to be on my working group.
If anyone doesn't have a handout, if you leave your email, I can send you PDFs.
I just hope that as you leave, that you feel good about this, that you want to participate, and that you have ideas of others who want to participate. So you have the fact sheet. If you've looked at the fact sheet, pass it to your neighbor. Get on the website, get connected, call MJ. Certainly you can call me. If you have more questions later about this idea of the working group and whether you want to participate or how to participate, I'm happy to talk to any of you. So, and I really appreciate y'all coming tonight.
Perhaps I can just raise something that I've sort of been hearing on the ground. And I appreciate the necessity of taking the time to really hear from people. How soon can we improve the appearance of that area in our town? Short of, like getting rid of the concrete or, some of the things that make that area that's often been described as an eyesore. And I know we don't want to get ahead of ourselves in the design, but
How soon
wait
can
till
it be cleaned up?
2026 to have it look different is a while.
That's a great question. I think we haven't really talked about that. We've talked a little bit about how the site could be used in the meantime, prior to construction, to bring life to it. Are there events that could still happen out there? We haven't talked specifically about any cleanup. Demolition, site cleanup, all of the prep needed to build the park is accounted for in the construction timeline and budget. So it would happen then at the latest, but I'll have to think more about that if there's any reason not to
Here's an
step
idea.
in sooner.
These kind of, and in New York where they're constantly building, right? And there's always a big fence or wall with a peephole here and there. There's no reason we can't have a picket fence or something around that site, that's decorated or artistically muraled or whatever, with
Way to get all those young people involved.
something of that sort.
One here, and then there's one there too.
I'm just wondering, the site would look better if we just made them get rid of the trailer, the lighthouse, and the movie screen. Who's responsible for removing them from the site?
Answer that, Orion?
SIF has a lease agreement to operate the shot well. So we're currently in conversations with them to work on deconstructing that. But if you've seen them, they're kind of moving a few things as they go out and about in their day. But that box, if it hasn't been moved already, it will be moved pretty soon. But they said that was on their immediate radar to remove. The screen will take a little bit longer to deconstruct.
Because the site will look a lot better
Yes.
once those things are moved. The concrete will still be there, but at least it will look better.
Absolutely. I saw a hand up over here.
I just wanted to I can talk loud. I just wanted to advocate that in the cleanup.
For the people at home.
I just want to advocate in your cleanup that we, if possible before 2026 and there's an alternative solution and we don't kill the only T-ball field in town. We had 9 T-ball teams last year, and if you're talking about wanting to inspire younger people, then you really need to focus on the youth in this community and not destroy their only place where they got to play T-ball and where the AAA softball team plays, because those are going to be the people that will have to be on your committees later.
Should we get into? Yeah. I'm glad you brought it up. Yeah, I'd love to answer it. There was, I don't know, what's your name, sir? We were talking about the field as well. Eric, yeah. Eric got here early, and we got into talking about the fields, too. So to be clear, the design process hasn't started yet. And the design drawing, the one you can see in the back there, was developed a while ago to help us come up with costs, to understand the order of magnitude of what it would take to improve the park. But if you can, I want everybody to imagine that that's just an initial sketch that we can really move on from as we talk to the community. So when we hear, the advocacy for keeping the ball fields, that's certainly in the discussion. It's not something that's already been decided, so stay engaged, and we'd like to keep talking about that. Some of the complexity that we got into with the ball field is that it doesn't work great today. It's muddy, right? Yeah, it's the worst, but it's the one we got.
We haven't played on the good field yet.
Yeah, it's like what's the expression? The food was terrible and the portions were too small. But so it's not a matter of just keeping the ball field. If it were to stay, I think, or move around on the site or something like that, it would need to be fixed up too. So I think that opens up an interesting conversation. If we know we're going to have to spend money there to improve the field, should we look at another place to build a field? Should we think about it differently? I don't have the answers for that, but that's part of the community conversation. Thank you for speaking up, though, because I know it's on a lot of people's minds, the ball field.
A lot of little 4- and 5-year-old kids there.
A lot of little minds, yeah.
We're expecting the Red Sox to come scouting them.
All right. Thank you.
My kids played T-ball on that field 30 years ago. Had to be tackled before they hit Group 1.
My kids, who was 50 years old, play in a softball league, and they would like to make sure that field stays for them also, not just the T-ball. There's an adult softball team around here that plays there regularly, and they'd like it to continue. Are we looking at the plan over in the back as the starting point of the design?
So the question was, is the design in the back the starting point? It's not really. I think it was an exercise to help us think about cost and get a rough impression of what's possible here. But I think it's going to be helpful for us to wipe the slate clean when we're talking together as a community. So yeah.
When you wipe it clean, are you wiping the original first one that came out with 100 apartments and stuff on it? Is that going down the drain?
Yes.
That wasn't us.
That's gone.
Yeah.
Can we say that louder one more time?
I think 87% of the voters said loudly, but I hear you, Alan.
The only thing I wanted to add to the folks talking about T-ball and softball, the working group is an important place to raise your voice also, to be able to bring those types of thoughts to the planning and the strategy of what the park is going to be. So just another pitch to also raise your hand as a volunteer there.
Another pitch.
Can I put this box up here for all of you who have the sign-up sheet with your email address and all that to stay in touch as you leave? Please drop that in the box.
I guess I have the microphone. Kathy, do you have some examples around the country that you've worked with on this size that you would say, look at this example as a starting point? I don't think anyone in this room has started to build a park before. So so the sketch was a helpful starting point, but I know as I've looked around different communities, I go, wow, that's a cool idea. And it's only because I had the initiative to go into that town and look at their park. So you mentioned Michigan and Florida. Different, are there towns that we would have access to go online and see something like that?
Actually, that's a good idea. Actually, I can probably give MJ some websites that would be good. But two things you said resonated. One is, as you all are driving around, stop in the towns and look at the parks, because it'll give you ideas about what they're doing or who's using it or what you might want to see at your park. I have to say I've never worked in a town this small, but I've worked in parks this small and smaller. And, you know, the principles are all the same about bringing together a team and figuring out how to design the park and manage the park. But I'll find some good examples for you. I'm thinking of one right now that I think I put before MJ a while ago, a small park in Dallas or Houston, supported by a family foundation, working in partnership with the town, about 7 or 10 acres, and how they did that process, how they created their board, what their board looks like, and that whole start process. And I have a few others like that. So they're not going to be a town of 3,600, but the same idea of the park size and the team that's involved. And that might be helpful.
Yeah. Great. Thank you.
What a wonderful gift this is to our community. Couldn't think of many things that are nicer that everyone can benefit from. But I'm also the most impatient person in town. Recognized for that, I take full of it. I look at the timeline, and I look at one thing, and I look at 2026, and I look at this going on until the end of the summer. You know, if we all look at the calendar, we say, all right, I'm in the master plan, I'm in the design phase, I'm in the construction document creation, and I'm in the construction. What can I do as a member of the working group, these people, what can I do to shorten that up so that I can take full advantage of enjoying this park at the beginning of the 2026 summer rather than the end of the 2026 summer? How can each entity shave some time off so we can have another year of enjoyment with this wonderful gift?
Yeah. Let's make a deal. There's lots of layers to that. I appreciate the comment. Construction needs to happen during the construction season. So that's one piece that's factored into this, when we can build. You know, it's outdoor work, so opening in the spring is difficult because it means finishing the fall before. So you're asking to bump it up almost a full year. So a cut like that to the schedule, I think the thing that would take the hit would be the community engagement and master plan. We would have to know already what this community wants to do and start drawing right away to expedite our process. So it's very deliberate to make sure that because of this place that we're at with a design that we really want to reopen for the community, because of where we're at and our commitment to that community process, we really think this first phase of master planning is critical, or else we sort of get off to the races. We start detailing before we really know that what we're drawing is what the community wants. The other piece is a conservancy takes time to put together, and we want the conservancy and the park to sync up at the right moment. In fact, the conservancy wants to be ready before the park opens so they can start getting themselves ready. So it's partly that as well, that if we go too fast, we won't have a conservancy in place in time, or it'll be rushed. And then just like rushing construction in general, we all know causes some issues. So this amount of time really feels right for us to do this thoughtfully, inclusively, and build it in a quality way.
And if I could just add to that, the Conservancy will be created probably by the end of 2024, but of course the park won't be done. But we had a long conversation today about there's groundbreaking is a ways off, and there's no reason why we can't use the space now. So how can the Lesher Family Foundation and the town figure out a way to sort of gather up the kind of things going on, the Tball and the softball and yoga in the mornings and Christmas tree lightings and all kinds of things that could happen over there? And can we create a schedule with partners in town, the ball field groups, the YMCA, the schools, so that we can actually start using it? The people feel comfortable, they feel welcome. Maybe there might be some signage out there. So there ought to be ways we can start to do that. And again, in our coordinating committees and working groups and all, we can talk about that. But there's no reason we can't do stuff out there right now. Actually, I spoke for you. It's your park.
I agree with everything Kathy just said.
Well, I think, wasn't there use for bringing food trucks over to that have a regular assembly of food trucks? It can be more than just food trucks. It can be maybe even arts and crafts, but begin to have programming and use that concrete area now and get started. I'm totally in favor of that.
I think I have the mic. So I'm relatively new to Rockport, less than a year, but coming up to a year here. My name's Charlie Costello, and I know that the emphasis has been talking about the young people in the community, but I wondered how, I don't know how Rockport, can people from outside the community volunteer to be on a committee? There's a couple of key people that have just retired that have incredible knowledge about plants and trees and seeds and things like that, that I would love to see either have some input, or how do we get that kind of input from them to then present to the committee?
Yeah, as the fellow plants and seeds person, me, I can't wait to talk to those folks. I know there are many in this community that are committed to ecology, committed to conservation, committed to gardening and landscape design. So I think it falls again into that, well, I think for some folks it might be through the working group to get a real engagement in some of those ideas, but through the public engagement process that I'll be steering. The public meetings, like I said, will have those smaller meetings associated with them, and I feel like a landscape or sustainable systems, natural systems meeting is definitely in order for this community.
And I'd also add onto that, just like those Tball players and the soccer players, we host players and families and people from all around, not just the 5 towns, but across the state in some cases. So, you know, the town of Rockport is a host for others to come and enjoy a town of Rockport park. And that doesn't mean that we don't welcome others to participate and make that a great place. But it's a town of Rockport park first and foremost, but we want to be the best host we can possibly be. So.
And we'll take any and all information and expertise and help in making this a great park.
It's 6:30, and unless anyone has a pressing question, I think you all can go home and have your dinners. Don't forget to leave those sign-up sheets. I love to see that box halfway full.
Let's stand by the door.
Yes, pens up here.
Thanks, everyone.
Lots of pens. Thank you for coming.